How should we address growth, housing, and infrastructure needs?
As one of the biggest challenges, it needs to be a focus all the way across the board. And the 2045 plan, there are items in there that we have plans in the city plan for adding officers to the police department, adding firefighters to the departments, but I don't see anything in the plan for maintaining the fire department's response time. As we expand, as we grow outward, we have a lot of folks on the periphery of the city limits, and as the calls increase to those areas, we're going to increase response times if we're not careful. So we have to pay attention to where the people are and how we can get to them with city services. Additionally, we need to make sure that, again, as I said before, we pay attention to what type of housing is being built where, and being careful of what, as a city commission, we approve, what types of housing, the affordability of the housing. If all we're doing is popping up McMansions everywhere, we are not allowing for folks of certain income levels to be able to afford to live in Johnson City. And if we're not careful about the types of businesses that we encourage to come to Johnson City, there are companies and corporations out there that will come in with their own leadership and with their own management. And yes, they're bringing jobs, but if all they're bringing is minimum wage jobs, then we have to be able to house folks who are only getting paid minimum wage. So if we encourage companies and corporations that are coming in, that are offering opportunities for middle class, upper class, and low income employees, then we continue to support everyone who's already here in Johnson City. We continue to enable the right kind of growth.
All of those, I think, we're looking at with our Horizon 2045 plan, the 20-year plan coming up, that we've looked into the expansion areas, we've looked into growth areas where we need to have houses, where we need to have apartments, where we need to have low-income housing, and where we have affordable housing, which is hard to do with our economy the way it is right now. The infrastructure we're trying to stay ahead of, the water and sewer. Our people have done a great job of planning for that, and we are in great shape with our water and sewer areas.
So I've already talked about the housing shortage. I think coupled with that, we need to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap a lot of other cities do when they enter a growth period and end up sprawled out, creating more congestion, creating a necessity for more lanes that will never keep up. I want to make sure that we have appropriate public transit, walkability, bikeability, so regardless of how you want to get around town, you can, safely. That's going to ease our traffic congestion issues. That's going to make the city more appealing for people wanting to move here and visit here, and it's going to make it safer for all citizens.
We should address growth in a manner where we are making smart and sustainable decisions for the growth that we can handle and manage well. In growth that's to come, it's important that we put in the proper infrastructure that can handle what our future holds. And how do we do that when it comes to housing? Work with businesses, builders, trades, developers to help offset costs, which will in turn bring down the price of these houses. I believe that it's important we provide workforce housing. Housing that those who are working our day-to-day jobs here in our community, where these workers have a place to call home. And so that's a challenge. But I'm hopeful that we can do that. And I've been working hard with not only people in our community, but those at the state level to advocate for bills to offset costs for infrastructure, which will in turn bring down the cost for homes.
Okay, some of the infrastructure is obviously old. None of us were prepared for the influx of people moving here after COVID. No one saw that. I think there almost needs to be a task force, or the city commission needs to sit down, look at the lay of the land, come up with a very complex plan of growth and discuss it, how we're going to have water, how we're going to have roads, what are we going to allow to be annexed if we are, how are we going to expand that to EMT, fire, police. All those things have to be done, and this just kind of happened and was thrown on us, but there does need to be something done. We need to sit down and form some kind of a, for lack of a better word, a task force that will address that exact problem, because it's coming. There's nothing we can do about it. The secret is out. East Tennessee is a great place to live. I've grown up here my whole life. I had plenty of opportunity to live anywhere in the Southeast, and I chose the Tri-Cities and Johnson City. So it's out, and they're going to continue to come, so we need to sit down and have a plan and put a plan together, which shouldn't be too hard. We can consult experts of other cities that have grown fast. We're all smart people here. We could sit down, we can involve the citizens of the town. There's lots of ways, but sitting around doing nothing's not a good option.
The city has opportunities to be a more constructive partner in the area of development and growth. And so that's why the city has initiated an effort, even in the current year, that I believe is called Johnson City Builds. That's an effort to kind of bring together all the different stakeholders. I think we've had an unnecessarily bureaucratic model to how we approached planning and development services and plans review and building inspections. And we don't want to lessen the safety standards, but what we do want to do is make sure that the process by which those plans and those buildings are evaluated and reviewed is responsive, efficient, consistent, and clear. And so we've brought together builders and architects and engineers and trades and different people who are a part of that world and brought them around the table with plans reviews and zoning folks and fire inspectors and trade inspectors to really try to hammer out a process that reflects best in class, best practice that will help make it easier for builders to build, because what we have in Johnson City is not unique to Johnson City as it relates to affordability and housing supply. That's a problem that's occurring across the nation. What we need to do as a community is be more nimble and responsive in how we deal with it. Now, I would add to that, there is legislation that has passed in Nashville that specifically deals with voluntary incentives that local communities can offer by way of what the legislation calls attainable housing. And so what that legislation allows a community to do is take its current zoning, land use maps and ordinances and potentially make concessions to builders that would improve the affordability. Now, that could be things as simple as adjusting parking requirements or adjusting density or various things that might allow a project to become more affordable because you're creating incentives where the builder is able to get more bang for their buck without necessarily needing taxpayer funds to subsidize the project. Now, I would caution that those are all things that are going to complicate and create consequences that experienced leadership, as one who served on both the county commission and the city commission and the planning commission, that experienced leadership that understands that when you make a concession on parking, you create a consequence somewhere else in the plan. And so this legislation is a great tool to have in our toolbox, but it's not something to be put in the hands of somebody who's, engaged in on-the-job training.
I think we need to be more reflective. We need to be sustainable. I'm afraid the way that we're going, of the 2,000 units that are going to be out in the gray area in the next few years, starting at $380,000 and going up from there to $800,000, that's not affordable housing. And we're going to be spending an awful lot of money on infrastructure out there. The city has committed us to tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure out there rather than here in the city. And I think it's very important that we have growth. I'm all for growth. When I first moved here, you could go downtown and park anywhere you want because there wasn't anything down there. But I think you also have to do it with reflection on what can be happening in the city. It has to be sustainable, and we're not sustainable. We have the salaries are way too low for the cost of the housing around here or the apartments around here. Pretty soon they're all going to leave, and then of course you can't be sustainable. If you don't have the people working, the everyday on, generation of people that are working, if we don't have them, we don't have a city. We're not going to be able to continue as a city.
With the city growing quickly, we need to take a step back and stop some of the things that we're doing trying to accelerate the growth. The city has been paying incentives to pay people to move here as remote workers. I think it's time to phase out that program. We need to focus on building better roads and infrastructure in that way. With housing, we need to definitely be building more housing, but we need a mix of housing, not just high-density housing, but also single family residences. We need to be addressing some of the other factors that increase our housing costs, such as property taxes increasing, such as most of our new housing has been in HOAs that we need to be able to maybe have to get some more transparency as far as what type of fees are being charged.
Johnson City has unique challenges with growth, particularly with housing growth. Most of it's, we've got complicated topography, we've got a lot of rock, there's a lot of expense that goes into that. So I think really kind of looking at zoning, making sure zoning's proper in areas where maybe some areas might be better to be more dense, some areas may be better to stay farmland and kind of stay grassy, and really have a good long-term plan on how that looks. I think also sitting down and making sure our current zoning code and building codes meet what people of today need. It hasn't been updated in a while, but what does the sidewalk requirements look like? Are those right or wrong? What does bike lane requirements look like? Do we need more or less of those? Is there other ways that we can kind of handle those as developers improve property that can really help coordinate that? And then also I just think, the building process and permit process and inspections in general just needs to be looked at, make sure it's as efficient as possible, and on top of being efficient, just customer focused and customer friendly. I think attitude and culture resolves a lot of issues, and so that's another thing to look at.